Good morning. Hope everybody's ready for a nice 4th of July. Time to celebrate our wonderful country. We will be in Genesis 1, starting in verse 1. Genesis 1. Last week we kind of laid the groundwork a little bit. We had a little bit of a ceremonial sermon that we talked about the major players that we're going to talk about here as we go through Genesis. Namely, of course, the almighty, all-perfect, all-knowing, all-wonderful God and us, right? The creatures that he creates and then turn against him. So today we're going to dive right into the story of creation, and we're going to look at that. So I want to start today by having you close your eyes for a second and imagine. We're going to do a little bit of imagination technique. So imagine, close your eyes. Wake up one morning, pour yourself a cup of coffee, right? Get ready to go out and do your day, and you see something out the window. What is that? So you go, you step outside, and there, right in front of you, is a brand new International Harvester Combine.
All right.
So, you know, your eyes, right? After the initial reaction of, oh man, this is green, right? What's your next thought? Sorry about that. I'm trying to keep a record of things like that. So what's your next thought? Right? If you're a rational person, your next thought is, where did this come from? Where's the driver? How did it get here? Where does it belong? Right? None of us would step out, see this beautiful new machine, and go, wow, after so long, wind and rain has finally made this appear. None of us would think that. It's an irrational thought. And yet every day, evolutionists, materialists, naturalists step out into an incredibly complex world, far more complex than a combine, and think that exact thought. That after a period of however many years they want to give, it doesn't really matter, because it'll never happen. It's impossible. They step outside and they think that every day. As we go into Genesis 1, we need to understand a few things. We need to understand specifically 3 or 4 things. First, there is no indication in this that it is meant to be read figuratively. This is literal. A literal 6 days, 24-hour period of God doing this work. There is no indication of that, of it being something that's figurative or many years or anything like that. It's meant to be read literally. So the other thing we need to understand is that the world has tried to trick us from this. The world wants to create a false dichotomy of either you believe in evolution and science and you're intelligent, or you believe in creation and you're a moron and a silly Bible thumper. And that's simply not the case. It's simply not the case. In fact, let's look at some definitions. Let's define the word science. Define the word science. The observation, identification, description, experimental investigation, and theoretical explanation of phenomena. So there's really 2 key words we should pull out there. Observation and experimental. Observation means you can see it. You can see it. You've seen it happen. Experimental means you can do it over and over and over again. If I take something, if I take a ball and drop it, what's it going to do? It's going to fall. That's an experiment. I can go over there and do it. I can go to China and do it. I can go to the moon and do it. And that ball is going to fall. We can observe it. We can experiment on it. We can do it over and over and over again. Well, there should be a problem with that because no one has ever observed creation. No one was there. We weren't there at the time. And there's never been another account of it. It's never happened again. It's only happened this one time. So this is not a matter of science. Let's look at the word faith. The assent of the mind to the truth of a proposition or statement for which there is not complete evidence. Belief in general. We don't have all the evidence. We didn't see this. We can't recreate it. We can't do it again. It's a faith statement. In fact, when you look at it, something like evolution and creation are actually both statements of faith, not statements of science, statements of fact. They're statements of faith. So what this means, this is the second point we have to get to. What this means is typically we don't get someone to the cross through creation. We don't get someone to the cross through creation. If you're walking down the street and you meet an atheist, the first way to evangelize them is not to start getting into a fight about creation versus evolution. Because they're going to be defending the faith just like you're defending the faith. We've got to go to the truth and the facts of the cross first. In fact, we get to creation through the cross. Once we understand the cross, and once we understand the work of Jesus, and once we understand the authority of the Bible, then we can build on creation. And we can understand creation. Because as a Christian, as a Bible-believing Christian, where the Bible is the authority, is the Word of God, is strictly true, and everything it says, everything it teaches, everything it tells me is true, well, now creation is very important. Because I don't have to attack Christ to get you to doubt Him. I can attack Genesis 1. And if I can get you to doubt Genesis 1, then I can get you to doubt John 3:16. They're by the same author. God wrote the same thing. So we have to understand as Christians, we need to hold on to this as literal. But we don't necessarily get someone to the cross through creation. If we're going to go and start arguing about creation, that's a silly argument to have with them right away. When I was an atheist, the first fight my wife had with me was not the importance of creation. It was the importance of the cross. We start there. We also need to understand that creation is far more complex than we could ever imagine. If we think a combine is complex, creation is going to blow that out of the water. And so I'm going to share some pieces with you today as we go through this, called the fine-tuning argument. The fine-tuning argument. Absolutely fantastic. It'll blow your mind if you start digging into it. I learned about it from a book called Is Atheism Dead? By Eric Metaxas. And it's astounding. It's more astounding that we see the created world every day than we would see a combine. Okay, so my goal today, how does the complexity of creation reveal God's love for us? The complexity of creation reveal God's love for us. Let's start in this. Genesis 1, the first 5 verses 1 through 5. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness He called night. So the evening and the morning were the first day. So the first thing, kind of what we talked about last week, we can see all three members of God at creation. God the Father speaking the light into existence, the Spirit of God hovering over the waters, and John 1:3, through Him, he's talking about Jesus, through Jesus, all things were made. Without Him, nothing was made that has been made. We see all three members of God in creation. Also notice that God immediately starts separating. Basically, the first thing He does is separate light from dark. And as we go through here, as we go through the rest of the week of creation, notice how much He separates. Our God is a God who separates things. That's natural for Him to do it. Apparently that's what He does right away, and He does it throughout. It makes sense that God would separate Abraham from everyone else, Isaac from Ishmael, Jacob from Esau, Joseph from his brothers, the nation of Israel from all the other nations, and today, believers and non-believers. It makes sense that He separates things because He is a God who separates. We're going to see an incredible amount of separation. Now, I promised you a little complexity. So let's look at the fine-tuned argument here. You probably know about gravity, right? But do we have any idea of how complex and perfect gravity is? If gravity were any stronger, if there's any more gravity, the universe would collapse in on itself. If there was any less gravity, it'd fly off in all directions, and the Earth would never be able to form around the sun. We would be able to hold ourselves. So if there was any more gravity, any less, we'd all fly off. And the difference between too much gravity and not enough gravity, the difference is the mass of a dime. A dime. So if you can picture.
That's war.
Oh, good. The difference is the mass of a dime. If there had been a dime more of mass in the universe, it would have collapsed. You would all be dead. A dime less mass, all fly off, you would be dead. That's how perfect that had to be done. And I have a hard time believing that just happened naturally. It's impossible. Right? Let's go to the next day, Genesis 6 through 8, 1, 6 through 8. Then God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. Thus God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. So the evening and the morning were the second day. The second day, he separates the sky from the sea, the heavens from the earth. Again, all separation. He is a God who separates. And it's interesting here that he doesn't use the word, it was good. And honestly, I don't really know why. I think this is the only day he doesn't say that. And we can assume, we can make assumptions, but I don't want to speculate on things I don't know everything about. I don't want to make speculation on things we don't know anything about. But this is the one day he says that something is not good. But do we have any idea how special water is? When we're done, I want you to go home. I want you to pour yourself a nice big cup of water. Then I want you to get 2 ice cubes and put the ice in there. And you know what that ice is going to do? You've seen it a million times. It's going to float. Ice floats. You all think I'm crazy now, all right? Okay, what causes something to float? It's not size, because we get a tree, a huge tree, to float down a river. It's not size. A little tiny pebble will sink. It's density. How packed in those molecules are. How packed in. We also know there's 3 states of matter. Gas, liquid, and solid. And we should know that as they progress through, they get more dense. Something that is solid should be more dense than something that is liquid. So ice, water, frozen water, should sink. Water is one of the very, very, very rare substances in the universe that actually gets less dense when it's freezing. It gets to a certain point and then it starts getting lighter. Very rare that it happens. It shouldn't happen at all. If it didn't happen, lakes, rivers, ponds would freeze from the bottom up. We'd all get it. We wouldn't have access to water only 8 months of the year. Fish, all that stuff, they couldn't live. How does he do that? That's how God made it. The third day, Genesis 1, 9 through 13. Then God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. So here he separates land from sea. He sees that it is good. It is complete. It is perfect. It is the way it's supposed to be. It is done. It is good. Then God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb that yields a seed, and the fruit tree that yields fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in itself on the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, the herb that yields seed according to its kind, and the tree that yields fruit, whose seed is in itself according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. So the evening and the morning were the third day. He creates vegetation. According to their kinds, that's more separation. That's more separation. An elm tree is not a tomato plant. And if we plant an elm tree, we shouldn't be surprised that we don't get a tomato plant. And can you imagine the chaos if that were not the case? Go plant these seeds, you don't know what you're going to get. One year might be corn, one year might be wheat, one year might be a sequoia. I have no idea. Because he separates and he makes things their own kinds. He makes things their own kind. Notice also, and I found this amazing when I first noticed it, notice also that the vegetation, he makes vegetation before he makes the sun. It is not the sun that gives plants life. It is God who is life. Who is life. He gives plants life. Now here as farmers, we know that. We know that you can do everything right. You can do everything right. You can have sun, you can have water, and you can do everything right, and that plant still won't come up. And I don't get it. We also know people who do everything wrong. They haven't tested their pH balance. They don't give their plants enough food or water, and they have a beautiful crop. Because we know that it's not the sun that gives life, it is God who chooses, through his sovereign will, to bless some and to not bless others. Okay, let's talk about the fine-tune principle again. Right? We talked about water before, let's mention it just briefly. You ever thought about the water cycle? The water cycle, we teach it to kindergartners because we think it's so simple and easy. But how does that happen? Water comes down in rain and snow, right? If it didn't do that, well, we'd all be dead. The sun is able to warm it up just enough, not too much, because if it did too much, it would never leave the atmosphere, just enough to get some back up into the air. If it did too much, we'd all be dead. It condenses onto clouds, condenses, and it comes back down, going throughout the earth. The water cycle. And we think it's so simple, so easy, because we teach it to kindergartners. But there's really no reason for that to happen. If the sun didn't warm up that water enough for it to go up, we'd all be dead. If the sun warmed it up too much, the water would never leave the atmosphere. We'd all be dead. See where this is going? Creation has to be so perfect for it to work. Okay, so what about plants themselves? You ever thought about photosynthesis? I knew you thought about that this week. No, you didn't, right? No one thinks about photosynthesis. It's just something plants do. Plants are able to feed themselves because their leaves are green and interact with the sun. If the sun were a different color, it wouldn't work. Plants would be dead, which means we'd be dead. If the leaves on the trees were a different color, photosynthesis wouldn't be happening. If they're chlorophyll, we'd all be dead. How does that just happen? It just happens? It can't just happen. Plants are able to feed themselves. And again, we have that refrain. It was good. It was complete. It was perfect. It was done the way it was meant to be done. It was good. Let's go to the fourth day, verses 14 through 19. Then God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens, to divide the day from the night, and let them be for the signs and seasons, and for days and years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens, to give light on the earth." It was so. Then God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars, Also, God set them in the firmament of the heavens to give them light on the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. So he the fourth day. The fourth day is a little special, because now God goes back and starts to fill in what he's created. He goes backwards. What we see here is almost an element of Hebrew poetry, where he's paralleling himself. Hebrew poetry is built on parallelism. And he kind of repeats himself over and over. It was good, it was good, it was good. God said, God said, God said. Go back to the same days. Hebrew poetry, we also see theology in here, as God reveals himself as who he is. You can't separate. You can't separate. History, this is history too. It's meant to be read literally. None of these words indicate a figurative language. God starts going back and filling in what he's done. Lights in the sky. The sun, the moon, the stars. And I would argue here we also see the first instance of him building to something. What's the purpose of the sun and the moon and the stars? To mark seasons, to mark days, to mark years, to mark sacred times. Well, he's going to build something that needs those. Plants don't need to know what year it is. Plants don't care. Plants just do their thing. They feed themselves in photosynthesis. But something else needs to know this. Okay, let's talk about the fine-tune principle again. You guys ever thought about planetary bodies? Planetary bodies. The stuff out there in space. Astronomy is an interesting science because it boasts more Christians than other fields of science. Psalm 19:1 tells us that heavens declare the glory of God. Okay? If the sun were bigger, it'd burn up the earth. We'd all be dead. If the sun were smaller, we'd be frozen. The earth would never be able to heat up enough. We'd be dead. If the sun was a different color, photosynthesis would work. Jupiter, millions of miles out there away, doesn't seem to do anything for us at all. Jupiter actually works kind of like a lineman for Earth. It blocks for us. It brings in all these asteroids and all these comets and all these meteors so that they hit Jupiter and they don't hit us. If Jupiter were a little further out, it wouldn't work. If it was hit by a meteor, we'd be dead. If it were a little closer, it would mess with our gravity. It would pull us a little further out. It would make things irregular in terms of the sun. Again, we'd be dead. The Earth's magnetic field, now it's really crazy. The Earth's magnetic field, which is caused by our core spinning, the Earth's magnetic field, it actually contains our atmosphere. If it were any weaker, our atmosphere would drift out into space and we wouldn't have an atmosphere. We'd all be dead. If it were any stronger, the atmosphere would be too much. We'd all be dead. Again, I hope you're seeing this point of it has to be perfect. Perfect. A dime's worth in one way or the other, and everything's gone. We think a combine is complicated? We think a combine is complicated? We haven't even gotten to the complicated things yet. We haven't even gotten to the complicated things yet. The fifth day, Genesis 1:20 and 23, which is going to be this is day 5. Day 5. Then God said, "Let the waters abound with an abundance of living creatures. Let birds fly over the earth across the face of the firmament and the heavens." So God created great sea creatures and every living thing that moves, with which the waters abounded, according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters of the seas. Let birds multiply in the earth." So the evening and the morning was the 5th day. God created fish and birds, and again we see separation. A fish is not a bird. A fish will never be a bird. A fish cannot be a bird. They do not combine. They do not combine. A hummingbird is not a whale. A dolphin is not a jellyfish. He separates things. He separates things. This is important because it basically is the argument against evolution. A human being is not a monkey. Never has been, never will be, cannot be. They are separate things. They were made according to their kinds. And God does something different for the first time on this day. He blesses these creatures. He blesses them. He tells them to be fruitful, to go forth and multiply, to fill the earth. To fill the earth. And we're going to fit this fine-tuning in with the next day when we talk about the other animals. Right? Again, it was good. It was good. It was the way it was meant to be. The way it was supposed to be. It was perfect. It was perfect because God had created it. And there's no wrong. There's no fault there. Again, that's important because what we know is coming later. What we're going to talk about in a couple of weeks. But right now, it's perfect. Perfect. Okay. The 6th day, part 1. Because he does 2 things on the 6th day. He does 2 things. So part 1, just verses 24 and 25. Then God said, "Let the earth bring forth the living creatures according to its kind, cattle and creeping things and beasts of the earth, each according to its kind, and it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth according to its kind, cattle according to its kind, everything that creeps on the earth according to its kind. And God saw that it was good." He creates land animals. He creates land animals, and we see that same separation repeated multiple times. He cannot make it any clearer. According to their kinds. An elephant is not a crocodile. 2 different things. If we want to talk complexity, this is where we need to start talking complexity. This, and the next thing you know is your name. Right? life, especially life of animals, life of humans. Life is incredibly complex. Incredibly complex. Okay, we all know, we're all intelligent people, the building blocks of life is DNA. DNA. To make one piece of DNA, you need things called amino acids. Okay? You get a little bit imaginative again. I want you to imagine that I have a bag of rice. A bag of rice, also a bag of rice. Right. I want you to imagine 1 grain of rice is red, and it's in that bag. 1 grain of rice. And I took this bag to you and said, okay, I want you to reach your hand into this bag. I want you to pull out that single grain of red rice. Do you think you could do it? Do you think you could do it 50 times in a row? To get one amino acid by accident, as a mistake, just by happen chance, you would have to reach into that bag of rice, pull out that red grain of sand 50 times in a row. Oh, and that that bag of rice is the size of the Sahara Desert. It's impossible. That's just one amino acid on one piece of DNA. The argument used to be, we just assign God to things that we don't know about, the God of the gaps. We don't know why this stuff happens, so God does it. And so we've studied and we've researched and we think we've filled in these blocks and figured out that God is, no, what we found is we don't know anything. All the stuff that we thought we knew has just continued to get bigger. And God has taken up more space. More space. Louis Pascal says a little bit of science takes you away from God. But a lot of science brings you to God. Once we see that there is no separation between science and faith. It's possible. It was good. It was good. It was the way it was supposed to be. So let's start with my first application. The first application I thought I need to say is that we need to be good stewards of the earth. Good stewards of the earth. We see God's love for us in this complexity. He's clearly building to something. There's clearly got to be one more thing He creates. One more thing. I hope you know what it is. There's got to be one more thing with all this beauty that He's given us. All these things that He's put together here for us has been for us. We realize God could have made everything taste like mud and dirt. But He didn't. He gave us different flavors. He could have made sure that all we see is shades of gray, but He didn't. He gave us wonderful colors that we get to see. We need to be good stewards of the good gift that God has given us. And many people have corrupted this. This is not a call for some radical green agenda where we throw over everything else just to save this earth where we worship creation. No. It's an understanding that God gave us a good gift, and it's our job to take care of it. That's what we're called to do. In fact, that's what God tells us to do in the 6th day, part 2. Genesis 1, 26 through 31. Then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let him have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in His own image. In the image of God He created him. Male and female He created them. Then God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. And God said, see, I have given you every herb that yields seed, which is on the face of the earth, and every tree with fruit yields seed to you, which shall be for food. Also to every beast of the earth, every beast of the air, and everything that creeps on the earth in which there is life. I have given every green herb for food, and it was so. Then God saw everything that He had made, and indeed it was very good. So the evening and the morning were the 6th day. Notice, we've seen it. God has been building to something this whole time. His ultimate creation. The best thing ever. The thing that's going to rule everything else that He's created. The thing that He's going to give dominion over. He confers with Himself. We even have a strange moment where we're pulled out of this narrative and God talks to Himself. Let us make man in our image. Again, we see a plurality here. He didn't do that with anything else he made, but he does it here. It's the only time he talks to himself. It's the greatest of God's creation, made to rule over all other creatures. And if we look at verse 27, it's the same phrase repeated 3 times. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. That third repetition, it's a superlative in Hebrew. In English, superlative, we have good, better, and the superlative is best. Best thing. Well, that third repetition is the superlative in Hebrew. This is the best, the biggest thing. And know what he's saying? Male and female, he created them. Male and female, but it's a little different in that third phrase, right? That third phrase, he flips it. He flips it so that male and female have now taken over the image of God. It was that the image of God was the subject, and now in that third phrase, the male and female is the subject of it. He flips it. Why does he do that? Because that's how important the image of God is, and he gives it to us. He confers it on both male and female. Right away, we should see that this is not a difference of equality. We are all equal under God. He gave both men and women the image of God, his image. So what does that mean? What is the image of God? We should realize that it's not how we look. Everyone looks different. It's not how we look. It's nothing to do with race or size or anything like that. It's nothing to do with ability. But there's something else, something deeper. And we can sit here and think of examples all day once we start to think about it. I was able to leave a few. First of all, our sense of humor. No other creature goes to a comedian and likes to laugh. And God has a wonderful sense of humor. I absolutely love what he does with Haman and Mordecai. This irony that he builds, right? And Haman ends up on the gallows that he built for Mordecai. Because God has this wonderful sense of humor. A desire to create. Every one of us wants to make something. We want to leave our mark somehow with something, be it a garden or a sermon or a family or a business or whatever. We want to build something. We want to create. Language. We get to speak. God reveals himself through language. Again, we don't see animals talking to each other like humans do. And finally, the ability to love. We may want to think that our animals love us, and that's great, I have no problem with that, but that's not the same kind of love as 2 people who have been married together for 40, 50, 60. We have friends who have been married for almost 75 years. That's amazing. That's a totally different type of thing. That is love made in the image of God. And what we see is that the image of God is what makes humans special. It's what gives us rights. It's what gives us importance. Because we are made in that image. Regardless of look, regardless of size or ability or where we are, every human is important because they are made in this image. They are unique and they are different because they are this way. And this is invaluable. This is invaluable because it what makes everything that we know wrong. Like slavery. We know slavery is wrong. When they wrote in the Constitution, all men are created equal, they knew it was wrong. And they laid the seeds for it to end. This is also what makes abortion wrong. Because every little baby in their mother's womb is made in the image of God. They are a special and unique human being. And that image of God is what makes us special. We don't need to love other people because of what they do for us, because of what they say, or because of anything else. We love them because they are God's image bearer. And that's why we love them. That's why God loves us and loves me, because I bear his image different than all other creation. It's invaluable. It's also what sin has corrupted. It's also what has destroyed us from the inside. Yes, we have a sense of humor, but God's sense of humor is perfect. It humbles the proud. Our sense of humor tends to build us up. It tends to give us pride. We want to make fun of others, put them down so that we can be lifted. Yes, we want to create, but when God created, he added nothing to himself. He gave himself nothing. He got nothing out of this. when we create, it's so that I can be remembered, so that I can be known, so that I can live in a better way. Language, God's word brings life. He says, let there be light, and it is so, it is good. You don't have to go far to find James 3, which talks about the power of the tongue and how we tear people down and rip them apart with words that we say. And our ability to love. God's love is steadfast. It is constant. He's loved us before He started creation, and He will love us long after this world is gone. He will continue to love us. Our love shifts with the winds. And we have to put in the work and the effort to love each other. The way God does not have to do. Again, we come up with creations all day. We come up with examples of this all day. The image of God and how it's been corrupted. But the image of God is God's gift to man. It is God's gift to us. We call it a spirit, we call it a soul. It's what makes us different from everything else. And again, what it is God separated. He separates man from animals. We are not animals. We do not have to be like animals. And when we believe in things like evolution, the next natural step is that man is therefore an animal. And we are no longer made in the image of God. And we have forfeited His greatest gift to us. Again, we don't have to go far to see this. Losing a pet is devastating. It's sad. It's sad. I don't want to take that from anybody. But losing a child, losing a parent, losing a spouse, losing a friend is devastating. Wounds that we can possibly never get over because it hurts so much because people are different. We're made in the image of God. And if you want to talk complexity, the complexity of man far outweighs a combine. If my combine is broken, I can take it somewhere and get it fixed. I can get a new combine and do the same thing. But you have a stroke, you have a head injury, you can't just go get that fixed. And when you lose someone, you can't just go to the store and get a new one. They're gone, and you miss them, and it hurts terribly. That's complexity. That's what God has given us. And God blesses man and woman. He tells them to be fruitful. He tells them to multiply. And He gives them the fruits and the plants to eat. It's not until after the flood that man can eat meat. But others eat too. I like to eat meat as well. But all of that fine-tuning that we've seen this whole time, all of it was for us. Ice floats so that we can live here. The sun is yellow so that we can be here. The Earth's magnetic field holds the atmosphere for us. All of that stuff that God made is for us. And what we see here is an all-powerful, almighty, all-knowing God who stoops down to our level to give us a gift. A king of kings, beyond all imagination, comes to the lowliest peasant and gives him everything he has. Because that is God's love for us. He stoops to us. And it ends with the phrase, it was very good. If everything else before this was perfect and complete and done and right, then what does that say about man now? Very perfect, very complete, done the way it needs to be done. And we know that later we damage this relationship. We know that later we break this. That's our fault. We can't put that on anyone else. But God, in His love and in His grace and in His mercy, gives us a way to fix that through His Son, Jesus Christ. And the only way we can go back to this perfect relationship with God is to accept the work of Christ on the cross. So if you're sitting here today and you don't see yourself in that relationship, if you struggle to find yourself in that relationship with God, then I tell you to come to Christ. Look to the cross. He has rebuilt this relationship. He has done the work. It is finished. And He will bring you back to this very good relationship that He will. Let's go to the Lord. Dear gracious Heavenly Father, You are Creator, You are Sustainer, You put the stars in the sky. You told the sea where to stop, and you give us the breath in our lungs. Your mercies are new every morning, and you make good and perfect world for us to enjoy. We come to you, Father, and admit of our sin, admit of our wrongdoing, and ask for the forgiveness offered in your Son, Jesus Christ. We pray you work to make us more like your Son, to help us love each other better, and to worship you more with every gift of creation that you've given us. Thank you, Lord, for all that you do for us, for all that you give us, in the precious and holy name of your Son, Jesus Christ.